talk a little bit about border security, Scott. It's a topic that we know quite well and we've been writing about for quite some time.
Yeah, one of the interesting things has been that the White House has really attempted to frame the narrative of the need for border security about terrorism. And, they've been trying to present these numbers that actually have proved to be false about the number of terrorist suspects coming across the southern border.
6 versus 4,000.
Exactly,
right.
Which has been embarrassing. But and honestly, when we look at the borders, it's not the border with Mexico that's been historically the problem. It's been the border with Canada. We've seen many more threats coming into the U.S. across the border from Canada. And then, of course, historically, really, most of the terrorists who have conducted plots in the U.S., that have come from overseas have actually flown directly in here or been grassroots jihadists, who had citizenship or status. So it really hasn't been an issue of terrorism coming across the border. There are issues with border and border security, but terrorism really isn't one of them.
Yeah, one of the narratives that I like to explain things with, Scott, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I'd love to know what our viewers think about this too, is back on our watch with the invasion of Iraq and Saddam Hussein. The narrative from the White House at the time was that we're going in because of weapons of mass destruction, which turned out to be not so true. Instead of focusing on what I thought the real problem was, that, as we know from investigating these attacks, that you had Iraq as a state sponsor of terror. They were carrying out attacks on diplomatic missions. They were targeting Americans. And I see a very similar kind of narrative problem with the White House messaging here, meaning if you look at the border, don't focus on the terrorism aspects because the evidence is really not there. Focus on the crime and the corruption and the child prostitution and all the issues that are relative to that are more important from a national security perspective when you start looking at this from a holistic aspect.
Yeah, I think too that when, getting to a holistic aspect, it's also important that we take border security beyond just a law enforcement issue. It really is something that needs to be addressed across the board, because we need to address really the demand side of the equation that's driving a lot of the border crime. So until we address the demand in the U.S. for illegal labor, until we address the demand for sexual victims, prostitutions, for drugs, until we can address those issues, we can't really stop it, because no matter what we do at the border, as far as physical security measures, they're going to find ways to defeat those measures, really because the profit is so huge that's there. And I mean, even today, when we think about drugs, for example, the vast majority of the high value shipments are not coming through the desert where there are not walls. They're coming through those ports of entries, on people's bodies. They're coming in cars, in trucks, in trains, on planes. So they're not passing through the desert like many people believe. And so that's really also a misnomer. So I think it's important that we think about the border not just in terms of the wall, but really in terms of holistically addressing the demand side in order to help secure what's there and to stop that flow. I also think that if we focus more on the criminal aliens, and if we can kind of keep a lot of the other people from coming, it allows law enforcement then to focus on criminal aliens, the gangsters that are coming in, the other criminal aliens that want to do things illegally here. Yeah, we've done a lot of analysis on the border, on smuggling, on the Mexican cartels, on gangs at Stratfor, and we really invite people to come to the site to really understand more deeply kind of the dynamics that are driving this very, very important current issue.